Let's now bring in Jessi Turnure from Washington, D.C. There are a lot of questions about this stimulus package, especially with the direct payments for people. So a lot of people we've been talking to here in the newsroom and calling in, they've been wanting to know, will this money be taxed now or will you have to file it on your income taxes in 2020?
So I've actually been digging into that this morning. I just got off of a Skype call, since that's how we've all been operating lately, with a tax expert here in Washington. And she was saying that you won't have to, that this money won't be taxable. It's essentially a tax credit. And so it's literally just cash to the American people that really about roughly more than 80% of Americans should get. The amount depends upon your tax return, how much you make. But yeah, for the most part, Americans will at least individually be getting $1,200.
Okay. And you said since it does go off of your tax return, that 2018 tax return, what happens if you were, let's say, a minor and you didn't file taxes in 2018 and now you are an adult and you've lost your job? What happens then?
Yeah, so it sounds like that they're pulling from 2018 or 2019, but since all of this hit and they are pushing back the deadline to file for 2019 as well. The tax expert that I spoke to said that you can actually do it for 2020 and they'll just give it back to you then. And so there is a little bit of wiggle room there for a case like you mentioned. Something though that I think people need to know is that when you think about children, you get $500 per child, but now in the language of that bill, it applies to what is considered a child under the child tax credit. And so that's actually only 16-year-olds and younger. And so those 17, 18 college students, parents would not be getting $500 for them.
Ah, that's good clarification there. What about, I know it's supposed to be deposited or direct deposited into your account. How are they going to figure out our account numbers and stuff like that?
Right, so that's why it's important that really the Treasury Department, what they're going to do is they're going to pour over these 2018 and 2019 records. And for people who have had that money, your returns deposited directly to your account, all you have to do is sit back and wait. And also, if you already had a check set up and you have the correct address in there, all you have to do then is sit back and wait too. And so you don't have to go online or call or anything like that. For the most part, they already have your information if you've filed your taxes. And so that's why the expert too was saying if you haven't filed yet for this year and didn't file last year, that's when you really need to file pretty much now to make sure you get that money, or else you would have to wait for 2020 if you're going to file then. We did hear from Secretary Mnuchin last night during that White House coronavirus task force briefing that they typically do every day, that this money would be going out within the next 3 weeks.
Okay, I was going to ask you that. So as far as the small business loans, can you elaborate about how that will actually work? I know there are a lot of small business owners out there looking for this.
Yeah, most definitely. And from what we've been hearing from small businesses, and it's not as easy getting the money as it is for direct payments, right? You actually have to go and ask for these loans. And that has been a problem recently with having to go online. People have been saying that it's been taking slow. It's been really glitchy. And so Mnuchin was able to address that last night too, saying that they're really trying to iron everything out now that this is pretty much looking like it's going to pass the House on Friday, and then the president will pretty much immediately sign it into law. He said that they are really going to try to work out some of these glitches over the weekend. And so then hopefully by next week, small businesses can really start feeling the impacts of that money.
Okay. And then if you were, let's say you were disabled on Social Security and you didn't file taxes, how will that work? Will you still get a check?
So it sounds like you will, because the Treasury Department also has your information to send you those checks. And so there's a special form or two that they already have on file. And so even though people are on Social Security, disability, things of that nature, and don't file a tax return, because they also have their information online to send them that check, it also sounds like they'll be getting this check.
Okay, and I know you just had that interview, you said, with a tax expert there. Anything else, any important other takeaways that you got from that interview?
Really, it sounds like for the most part that people will just kind of have to sit back and wait. But for 2018, 2019, as long as you filed, you're essentially good. And then, yeah, it sounds like no matter what, you'll be getting the money. You just may have to wait until 2020 if you didn't file. But I think that note about the kids is really important, because I've been seeing a lot of that on Twitter. Just, does my 18-year-old qualify? Things of that nature. So I guess one of the main takeaways is just don't be disappointed by the amount of money if you thought you would get more, because there is language in the bill that just made the child 16 years old or less. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I think that that's the main takeaway. And she said too that it's kind of unprecedented in a way, just because this hasn't happened for more than a decade. But direct payments did go out during the recession of 2008 as well.
Okay, and real quickly, can you just kind of wrap up what happens next? It was passed in the Senate. Where does it go from here?
Yeah, sure. So it did unanimously pass in the Senate finally late last night, and now it essentially sits on the House floor for 24 hours so members can read it and know exactly what they're voting on. And then tomorrow, like you were saying, the House is expected to vote on it, but a lot of members won't be coming back for that because they want to stay in their districts to protect themselves from the coronavirus. And so that's why it'll probably be on a voice vote or recorded vote. And then, yeah, it should be going to the president from there. So that's why this weekend, really, the ball will start rolling on all this.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us that update. I know a lot of good information there that a lot of people wanted to know.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on.
All right.